Hey Adventures, welcome back. I am excited to bring you some of my favorite escaper friends. This is Diana and Matt. They've got a great channel, and I'm going to have them introduce their channel to you and tell you just a little bit about them, and then I'm going to ask them some questions.
Hey, so yeah, we are Matt and Diana from The Adventurous Way. You can see our channel at Adventurous Way on YouTube, and also our blog at adventurousway.com. And we are full-time RVers. We hit the road last summer.
Yeah, last summer.
And our goal is to visit all 419 national park units around the US.
So this includes national parks, but also national monuments, national historic sites, national seashores, and so on.
And we really love the national parks. We used to live in California, and we had so many fun trips out to see the national parks. But we wanted to see more. We wanted to really see them all. And we said there is no other way to do that well other than having an RV. So we hit the road last summer, and we are now full-time RVers.
Tell us where you're originally from.
So I'm originally from Latvia. I came to the United States about 11 years ago to go for college in Massachusetts. And after that, I moved to San Francisco, and I lived there for 7-8 years, and that's where we met.
Yeah, and I moved from England to America about 5 years ago to the Bay Area, and I met Diana shortly after I moved here. And yeah, we love traveling now.
And that was 5 years ago.
5 years ago, yep.
I'm just American. I'm from the Northwest. So you guys are coming at this from a little bit different perspective, and I'd love to hear what you can tell international travelers about your experience traveling the United States in an RV and your experience with the national park system.
Yeah. So Latvia is a very small country in Eastern Europe. It's only populations are only about 2 million people, and the land, not that big. And it's incredibly flat. Our highest peak is around 900 feet, which is incredibly flat. So for me, I just love exploring the United States because it's so huge. And there's so much different kind of scenery. There are deserts, there are mountains, there are beaches, and so on, and huge canyons too. So for me, when I first moved to the United States, I spent a lot of weekends exploring and moving to California, and there's just so much to see in the United States that coming from a place that, it's beautiful, but maybe less diverse in the range of geographical features that a country can have. That's why I love and I'm really interested in seeing all the national parks.
And I think traveling by RV in the US is just so easy. We've stayed west of the Mississippi so far, so we've been very fortunate. There's a lot of public lands that we can go and boondock on that makes it incredibly easy. We did that deliberately. We have spent a lot of time road tripping around California and the states neighboring it. So we kind of know this area better. We felt safer, I guess, in that. We sort of knew what to expect a bit more. But as we've been traveling around, we've had so much fun camping on the public land, visiting the national parks, and like you said, there's so much diversity. Mm-hmm. Like just in a relatively small area, you can just see so much. It's also very easy to travel by RV.
Oh, yeah.
We have a relatively small trailer, 21-foot travel trailer.
For American size?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
For Europe, that would be huge.
Yeah, and so we tow it behind our truck, and it works really well for us. We can use our truck to go off exploring and visiting the national parks and driving around, but we have still a little home base. But it's just so easy. Like, there's plenty of space, the roads are nice and wide, we don't have any problems with that at all. And there's infrastructure as well. If you do need to dive into an RV park, or looking for dump stations or whatever, gas stations are designed to fit vehicles that size. So we find it very, very easy.
And there's a lot of resources online to learn about it. Like in Latvia, I don't think I've ever seen a caravan, and I don't think we even have RVs or RV parks. So that was completely new for me here. And you had seen some in UK.
Yeah, caravans in the UK, as we call them there, are I don't think used in the same way as they are here. They're less of the adventure vehicle. It's more of like a retirement kind of activity. So we were a little bit skeptical, I think, when we first started looking, saying like, is this a normal thing to do? And we've learned very much so. There is a big community of people out there doing exactly what we're doing. There are some interesting things we found though as international people in the US as we've travelled. So we didn't grow up here. We've only been here 5 years and 10 years or so for you. So we haven't had, say, family or friends around the country in different areas, and we haven't had exposure to, say, news stories about different areas. So we get to a new state and we're like, what do we need to know? Like, not only some of the local laws that might be different, but what's going to kill us? Do they have earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, snakes, spiders, scorpions,
bears,
mountain lions?
Yeah.
And I don't mean to paint a negative picture in any way, but just we've had to learn those things as we've gone along, as opposed to having grown up with those. And that always makes it a bit more exciting. We headed to Oklahoma recently for a friend's wedding, and we're like, is that like where tornadoes happen at this time of year? And so we decided in the end to park our trailer in Albuquerque and do that drive on our own, just without the trailer. And things like that are kind of the fun little gotchas.
But all of that we were able to research and learn ahead of time.
And thanks to this community, we just reached out to the Escapees group actually and said, we're thinking of doing this. Are we crazy? What do we need to know?
Yeah.
What do we do if a tornado strikes? And people send us some great links to sort of the weather service and things to help us learn.
And along our travels, we have seen people come over from Europe and rent motorhomes and stuff like that. So they are around and travel here, including RVs.
I've definitely seen a lot. Most of the rental RVs are mostly folks, international visitors.
Remember one
Mostly
time
from
at the dump station, a young couple, I
Yeah.
think they were from Germany.
Yeah.
They were trying to dump their black tank, and
They'd rented like a Cruise America or something, and they had very little idea. First time ever doing it. They had no gloves, which is never a fun predicament to be in when you're dumping a black tank. And they also didn't speak very much English. But fortunately, we were able to sort of. My German is also almost non-existent, but we sort of stumbled through it and helped them just understand, gave them some gloves.
Yeah.
Don't want those back, you can keep those. And but you do meet some really interesting people on the road.
Last spring I went to Sequoia and Kings Canyon, and when I was in Kings Canyon, I didn't hear anyone speaking English the entire day.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that you're probably running into more international travelers just because you're doing the national park units.
I think so. We see a lot of people who like us are tourists. I mean, sometimes we try and avoid calling ourselves tourists because we feel we live here and it's at home, but we are literally the definition. We are touring around, visiting places. I think we do tend to therefore maybe find more international people than you would just staying at home. Both having lived in the Bay Area, there's a huge number of sort of international people in the area, so we had a lot of international friends and colleagues and things. So it's maybe not more than we had before. What we do try and do though is really seek out local people when we go to an area. So we came in through Durango, for example, when we first got to Colorado. And the first thing we had to do was fill up the propane. We were completely empty. And so we stopped in to fill up propane, and I was having a chat with a lady as she was filling it up. Where's good to eat? What should I do around here? What do you guys like to do at this time of year? And you find some real hidden gems by doing that. Find things that aren't going to be in the proverbial guidebook or online. So we definitely do that.
Yeah.
I think the flip side of that though is when we turn up somewhere, given our accents, people instantly assume that we are tourists there short term. And so sometimes they're like, oh, while you're here, you should definitely try and check this out. And when we say like, oh, but we live here or we're here in the area for a couple of months, you sort of have to be careful when you drop that into the conversation because you can't let them go too long because otherwise they feel like an idiot when you've revealed that their plan for your 3-day trip is meaningless. But at the same time, we want to learn from them. We want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips or words of advice for folks who are American who are wanting to take an RV or a van, probably more specifically a van,
yes, that's probably easier,
to Europe or anywhere internationally?
I think that the biggest thing you have to keep in mind, everything is smaller in Europe.
Yeah.
The roads are smaller, the roads are narrower, so...
And particularly in the cities. If you go to
yes.
more historic cities and things, they were designed and planned or whatever long before motor vehicles were a consideration. And so the cars are smaller, but you're not going to get a big Sprinter van down some of these streets. So just bear that in mind. You may find yourself staying a little bit further out and then cycling in or walking in
or taking public transit, and that's okay because in Europe public transit is really, really good. You can actually get around. You can stay somewhere further out of the city and then take the train or bus in, and now those systems are so much easier, and a lot of the cities have like digital, like you can pay with a phone or like you can buy like a card like you can tap on and top off each time.
I think there's a few, so talking about like the resources in here and things, some things to bear in mind, particularly around power. Europe is a continent of many countries, and there are very few standardized systems across the continent. So for example, expect to have different plugs as you go different places. So your rig might be set up with all 110-volt sockets and your inverter and things, but make sure that you've got a way to charge from the shore power if that's your plan when you get there. Obviously 12 volts is still 12 volts, USB is still USB, so all that stuff is great, but just bear that one in mind. Particularly if you're going to the UK, we're very special. So we have our own plugs that's used very, very few other places in the world. Singapore, for example, is one.
Right.
The 3-pin plug that we have, don't stand on those plugs. It's worse than Lego, I promise you. But just bear in mind things like that. We run on a different voltage. You're going to have to sort of think through those things.
And in UK you drive on the other side.
And we drive on the quote-unquote wrong side of the road. It's not typically an issue, but if you do start to get to, for example, any toll booths or anything, bear in mind that especially if you're travelling alone, you're going to be reaching out to your passenger window. So just think about how you would do that. We don't have many toll roads in the UK, but there are a few, and bridges and things, so bear that in mind. The other one is gas, or petrol, as we call it. Significantly more expensive over in Europe compared to here. Certainly on the continent, diesel is often cheaper than unleaded gasoline. So if you have a diesel vehicle, that can work out slightly better for you. But really bear that in mind. I think when I moved here, people were like, oh, gas is so expensive in California. And I was like, this is a third of the price that I'm used to. This is insanely cheap. And also a fun little one that most people don't realise, the pint is different in the UK.
Yeah, we were talking about that at the brewery.
Yeah, so our pints are 20 ounces, not 16. So I moved here and I'm like, wow, either my hands have got a whole lot bigger or your pints are really wrong. And that's a problem in two ways. One is the beers are therefore correspondingly larger, so be warned. But that knocks on to also be things like the gallon is then a different size. So when you're reading miles per gallon figures and things, bear in mind your miles per gallon will be different. So just especially if you're looking to rent a vehicle rather than ship one over, just bearing in mind some of those translations, just because it's called the gallon doesn't mean it is the same as the US gallon.
So in Europe, at least I haven't come across, there aren't that many public lands. So pretty much anywhere you want to camp, you'll have to pay for camping.
Yeah, do expect to be private campgrounds a lot more.
Can you stealth camp in Europe?
I don't know, to be honest. I mean, RVing is something we got into in the last few years, so it's something that we didn't explore very much there. I imagine there's a big difference between can you and should you.
Right.
Can you? Probably, especially in a stealth van, yes. I don't know if it's allowed. That would need to be something. And again, back to that
and it's
comment,
different countries.
It's different countries.
Yeah, so probably different. Each countries, or maybe even in each city, might be different laws.
And I do know that the iOverlander app is more international. It's actually more useful internationally than it is in the U.S. So if you are planning on taking a van around anywhere other than the U.S., iOverlander app is a great resource.
Cool. I've got a friend in the UK who's doing a custom van build out at the moment in a little Transit Connect, and it's a much smaller van than something like this. But she's having a great time because she can go anywhere. You don't have the same amount of like quote-unquote off-road stuff, like the long dirt roads, certainly in England, other parts of Europe do. So you don't necessarily need to worry about having high clearance, four-wheel drive, unless you want to start, say, going skiing, and you want a van that you can take up to the Alps in winter or something. Just do your research, I think is the thing, and it's a big place, Europe, and much like
yes, it is.
Whenever I hear someone's gone to England and said like, oh, I went to London, and I'm like, where else did you go? And they're like, well, I just went to London. I always say it would be like visiting New York and saying you've experienced the US.
Right.
You really haven't. You've seen a very small bubble, one very particular part of it.
Yeah.
And the same is true in Europe. Just depending on where you want to go, you might find very different things can be appropriate or not.
Yeah, and each country can be small. It can be smaller than some of the states that the United States has.
For sure.
I would say look on YouTube. There's some people out there doing in Europe exactly what people over here are doing in terms of RV life stuff and van life stuff. Check out their channels, see what they're doing. And also find people who are from Europe, for example, coming over here, and you can listen to the way they speak. So Combi Life is a good example, where he's come over and like get a sense for how he reacts to things over here, and you'll get a good impression for like what he's not used to almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Combi Life they traveled through South America, so that's also an international experience. So they have a lot of useful stuff on their
Where are they
channel.
from?
He's from the UK, and she's
I think from Australia.
But yeah, I just think in general, don't be afraid of it. Don't think it's this big scary other place. But also accept the fact it is going to be different. We didn't mention languages, but obviously
Yeah.
once you leave England,
Yeah.
you are in somewhere that's not native English speaking.
And currency is different.
So you've got to have different currencies.
the
Not all of Europe is the euro, so
Yeah.
bear that in mind.
Internet might be a little bit harder. Like it's cheaper in Europe, like cell phone plans, but you might end up having different ones depending which country you go to. Like they might not have one that like roams all over Europe. So
Okay.
if you're working, you might have to kind of spend more research into that.
But it's just super good fun, and isn't part of traveling the learning and the like the problem solving and
Yeah.
experiencing new cultures and things.
Yeah.
And I think that's what almost makes traveling to Europe so interesting, because you are embracing that and really, yeah, you've got to do your research, but the reward is huge. There's some beautiful rural areas and cities and things to explore.
And even if you bring your van over, maybe don't feel like you have to just do that. Maybe combine it with some days that you explore with train or go into the city with train, because train and public transit is super affordable in Europe.
Yeah. And fast.
Yeah.
Fast, yes.
Yeah. And often pretty cheap as well. It's a really quick and easy way to cross international borders. You can take the Channel Tunnel from England, you put your vehicle on there, and it'll take you right into France. So you can really explore quickly that way.
Excellent. I did not know you could put a vehicle on the
Yep.
tunnel. Okay. Very cool. So remind us again what your channel is and
So our channel is Adventurous Way. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook and Instagram at Adventurous Way, and on our website at adventurousway.com. And we are trying to visit all the national park units. So a lot of our videos you'll find are less about our rig and our RV travels, and more about the national parks that we're visiting.
Yeah, but on the blog we have a lot of detailed write-ups, both about the national parks, but also about our electrical system.
so well, thanks so much for joining
Our
me.
pleasure. Thanks for having us.
This is Joni with the Galavan. Enjoy your journey.